Welcome to the Let's Slow Down podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie, and I'm interrupting our summer short series to include a full episode on pausing and slowing down. I recently interviewed Eva-Maria Smith, co-founder of The Pause, and we talked about a retreat she's hosting in late September. So I wanted to get this episode out sooner rather than later in case anyone would like to attend. I'm thinking of going too, so maybe I'll see you there. For any new listeners out there today, Let's Slow Down is a podcast that focuses on all topics slow living related, highlighting conversations about how to add simplicity and ease to live a more intentional life on your own terms. So welcome, and please pass this along to a friend by sharing or posting on your Instagram stories, tagging Let's Slow Down 2023. Hi, everyone. Today I have Eva on the podcast. She is a mother of 3 on a slow living journey, just like me, since 2015. She's co-founder of The Pause, a slow and intentional living retreat for mothers. She believes success shouldn't be measured in productivity, but rather in joyous moments and a regulated nervous system. Welcome to Let's Slow Down, Eva. Thank you for coming today.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me.
So I have so many things I want to talk to you about. I'll try to fit it all in today, but why don't we start with a little background on your family and your slow living journey? So you said you've been on this journey since 2015. How did it all begin for you?
Yes. So 2015 is when I had my first daughter. Actually, my only daughter, my first child. So I am actually a German native. I grew up in the south of Germany. And then I met my American husband in 2010. And then we lived in the Seattle area for a little while. And then we went back to Germany, and that's where I had my daughter. And with her arrival, a lot of my perspectives shifted. I think that's, the common theme of motherhood, right? It's very transformative. I had a unmedicated home birth. So I really feel that kind of catapulted me into like a season of growth. And that's probably when I first learned about like a capsule wardrobe and minimalism and things like that. And I really came to it from an ego standpoint at that point. And that's when I kind of integrated like the first couple of changes into my life. But then it wasn't until my second child, my son Winter, was born in 2017. And within several weeks, we had to leave our home and move to Southwest Texas for my husband's job. And that was just like this huge shock, like right postpartum. Like I found out, I think the second or third day after I had him, that we're moving.
Oh, wow. That's big news with a newborn.
I was literally on my bathroom floor crying. Like I did not want to go, but I went, and that was just a really difficult time for me. So at the time I didn't know this, but my son has a rare genetic disease. So his development has always been very slow in comparison. And also he doesn't sleep. Like he literally cannot sleep. And at the time I didn't know that, though. All I knew was that, between me and my husband, we would never sleep more than 3-4 hours a night. I had no family. I had no community. I had a really hard time finding like-minded people around me. And so I just ended up in this really burnt out state. And I think that's when the facade sort of cracked and this light that is slow living flowed in. I do believe that's almost how all of us get to that point. I think either because we've just been crazy, busy, and rushing about, or something happens in our life and that makes us realize, wait a minute, that cannot be how I want to do this. And so then I really, just tried everything to just slow down and minimalize and really slow down my days by adapting a lot of very gentle rhythms. I was very familiar with the Waldorf philosophy from just being from Germany. And so I really kind of looked into that and adapted like a lot of early childhood things from that philosophy. And that's kind of where it started for me, and it became a huge passion. And as I've transitioned out of this really tough phase of my life, and not saying that I don't have hard days now as a mother of 3 and a special needs mom, but I do feel like I'm now have progressed from not just being the student, but also finding myself in the role of the teacher.
That's such a great perspective. And it's so true. It's such a learning experience. I mean, life is a learning experience, but add motherhood to the mix. And I mean, you're getting thrown in, right? You're learning on the job every minute. You mentioned gentle rhythms. I love that. I am trying to approach my daily rhythms more gently. I think over the course of my slow living journey, I've noticed that I'm really hard on myself. And I don't think it's just me. I think the more people I talk to, it's kind of like we beat ourselves up more than anybody else. And we don't give ourselves the grace, and we're not patient. We're not kind with we're not even nice to ourselves half the time. These conversations in our heads. And I think it comes from a place of overwhelm and being really tapped out and just being in that survival mode. I know you had mentioned that the nervous system and kind of regulating all of that. And that really hit me because I feel like that's such a huge part of it. So talk to us about some of the gentle rhythms that you have found helpful, that you now incorporate in your life that maybe weren't a part of it a few years ago.
Yeah. So first of all, right, there's routines and then there's rhythms. And then there's something that I kind of refer to as like simple pleasures that's kind of where I'm at. I think most of the people listening to your podcast probably have already left the routines behind and have already maybe transformed into like the rhythm state of their life. However, even, with rhythms, I feel like we often get so caught up in what it looks like for others and what it could or should look like for us. And that's where you see all those limiting beliefs, even, from like societal or from our childhoods, and that negative self-talk where I may not be able to have my hot water with lemon this morning. And now it becomes a feeling of lack and scarcity versus of, hey, no big deal. Maybe I'll have it later in the day, or maybe I'll have a nap instead. And so this is where right now I've just adapted this thing that I call like simple pleasures. It's just whenever I can, I will do something good for myself. And that can look different every day. I mean, ideally, like some mornings now, my kids sleep long enough to where I can sneak out and I'll have a dip in our pool. We left it up all winter, so we did cold plunging. And
Wow.
yeah, I
And
love it.
and you're
I
in
love it.
Oklahoma, right?
I'm in
So just to let
Oklahoma.
the listeners know where
Mhm.
you are. Okay.
Yeah. And, ideally, like I jump in the pool, I have a big drink, like a big glass of water, and do some breathing exercises. But the reality is, a lot of mornings, it's maybe just a glass of water as I'm already preparing breakfast, or it's just like breathing, like that could be a 10-minute exercise, but that could literally just be 3 breaths. And instead of punishing myself and already starting my day with this, wow, great, it's already not going the way I wanted it to. I'm just being very forgiving with the situation. This is just the season of life that I'm in. And I just try to focus on the small things.
It makes a big difference, doesn't it? It changes things. It changes how we feel in the moment. It changes our mood, how we act with others. I notice that when I get it together enough to have that mindset as well, especially in the mornings, because the mornings can be crazy, everything just goes better. It flows easier. Everybody's happier. When we are kind of the leaders of our household as mothers, especially a lot of us are the ones with this morning routine. And man, if I get up and I'm exhausted and I let that affect me and I don't kind of take a minute or do something like you're saying, take a couple breaths, just pray for a few minutes, something. If I don't do something for myself, I feel like me and the kids, our entire day is like all of a sudden diverted into a different direction, one that we'd rather not be going in probably. And it's a contagious feeling, that stress and that just those moods, and the good moods are contagious too.
Yeah,
So
and I would really think like the lesson for me is in not asking myself, what can I add into my day, even if it's like, a seemingly positive thing, but it's more so like, what can I take out of my day and where can I create an opening? Because it's when we have an opening, that's where we can fill our minds with learning and growth, or fill our hearts with something that feels truly good for us, right? So basically, I think slow living is all about just creating openings again and again and again.
The space. It's that
Mhm.
space that we all need, and we don't get it. So I read something this morning, and I'll just read a little taste of it. It's talking about this age of busyness and go, go, go. And that the curse of this age is overstimulation of the senses, which blocks out awareness of the unseen world. And it goes on to say that spending time alone is the best way to develop seeing eyes and hearing ears. And the goal is to be aware of unseen things, even as you live out your life in the visible world. And that struck me this morning as I read it. And I think it relates to what we're saying here. We need that space to really feel, be present, witness the world around us, because so much of it, I notice, I couldn't agree with you more. Less is more. Filling our day with some kind of space, finding those little pockets, even if they're just a few minutes here and there, it helps me really see and live. And for example, like even on a walk, if I'm calmer and I have two dogs, and if I'm walking the dogs and I feel really just calm and grounded, I notice things, walk the same route many, 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 many times, sometimes multiple times a day. All of a sudden, I'm noticing things that I'm sure were there. I'm sure I've walked by them countless times before. All of a sudden, I notice it. And, you hear the birds, you maybe notice something beautiful in your neighbor's yard or in the woods or wherever you are. It just helps you be so much more present. And I get so much more out of that same walk that I did it the day before, but didn't get nearly as much out of it because of my state of mind and because I'm giving myself that space to be more present. So I think it really is that less is more, that whole less is more feel with everything.
Yeah. That presence piece I think is huge. And actually a lot of people ask me all the time, like, what is slow living? And I always like to describe it as a circle. And because it's both a journey and a destination, right? And I think it starts with the like slow to me is a realization, and that's life is finite. And then slow is a question. And the question to me is like, am I fully awake to see the wonder that is this beautiful life for me? Am I fully alive? And then that question leads me to action, which is just creating that space and slowing down and practicing that mindfulness. And then it comes to the feeling. And the feeling is that feeling of the deepest calm within yourself, just feeling yourself again. And if I had to use a metaphor, I would say like, an ocean and like you kind of want to sit at the bottom where it's like kind of still. And it doesn't matter how the waves gonna crash above your head. You're in the still place. And I think that still place is what we all desire and where we want to be. And we're never gonna all be in that space all the time. And I think that probably also would be maybe boring. But I think slow living is all about like going around the circle and then always regularly returning to that feeling.
That's a beautiful image. I love the ocean as well. That picture of like those waves are going to come, right? But it's
Mhm.
grounding yourself and that is life. And you've created a retreat. You've co-founded a retreat called The Pause. And it helps mothers return to themselves and find that place of calm again, which is,
Mhm.
I think, exactly what you are describing here.
Yes.
So talk to us about The Pause. I love the name. I'm going to link it all, but everyone listening, take a few minutes today and please just click on the website and the Instagram page and you will feel calmer instantly. It's beautiful. So
Thank you.
tell us all about it, Eva.
Yeah, so my friend Rachel and I, we met a couple of years ago. We both did a virtual postpartum doula training with a lady in Australia. And that's how we've met throughout our studies. And she kind of like took off running with her doula business, and I just focused on some other projects. But we kept talking throughout the years, and it got kind of more during COVID. And last summer, we were on the phone and we said, oh, I could just really use a break. And I could just like, if I could just get away for a couple of days. And she's like, yeah, I'm right there with you. Maybe we should finally like plan a meetup because we have never, at that point, we had never met in person. And I was like, if we're feeling this way, how many mothers are out there right now thinking the same thing? And where is the safe space for them to go and just find rest and be in community with other mothers. And so we just ended this phone call with a rough plan of who we would like to invite to these retreats with us. And then it went very fast. So Rachel is just, galloping. Like has so much like wonderful life energy, and she just galloped ahead. And within days, she sent me like all these locations. And yeah, and we booked, and within 3 months, we put on our first retreat. It was a whirlwind.
So tell us about that first retreat. How did it go? Where was it? What did it kind of describe what a day would look like there?
Okay, so our first retreat was in Ohio in a little treehouse village. It was sort of
there's treehouse villages. That's a real thing.
Yeah, there is.
That's amazing.
So we were renting out. So we booked the whole property, and then each guest could rent their individual treehouse or share with a friend. We had 8 women attending, and it was beautiful. And so a day at the pause. Well, so actually every day looks a little bit different, but it flows really beautifully. And when we had planned the Pause Ohio, it was just an idea. It was just a theory, but then actually being there and seeing it come to life, like that was the magic for me. And it also affirmed like that our itinerary kind of was spot on. And so the way we structure our retreats is the first day, I would say, is to arrive and to unwind and to open and to just kind of, because it's scary, right? So I think at the time these mothers arrive at our retreat, they've already done the bravest thing, because they've already like went through the process of deciding for themselves that they deserve this time away, that they are not bad mothers if they get away for a few days. They have talked to their partners or support system to make this happen, and they put the financial investment into themselves. So I think they already arrive with this big moment of growth, really. And so the first night, you stood in circle.
You know what? Actually, I want to pause you right there, because I have something I want to add to that about my personal experience. This was a few years ago. It's really about unwinding. You're giving yourself this gift, this beautiful gift of some time away. And my husband and I were fortunate enough to have a trip planned, just the two of us. We were really looking forward to it. It was long overdue. We have 3 kids, and our youngest I think she was 4 at the time. She was still in preschool. And it was right at the beginning of the school year. So I think we maybe made it to her first little day, and then we missed the next couple, which I was feeling so much guilt about. And of course, it was all fine. We're very lucky. We have a strong grandparent support system. So grandparents took over, had it all worked out. But I remember in the days leading up to it, I had this whole calendar. And there was a hurricane coming where we were going. My mother-in-law says, she's like, there's no way you guys are going. Nope, it's going to be canceled. And then I'm thinking like, it wasn't getting canceled. I'm like, I am such a bad person. Am I going to willingly fly into a hurricane and leave my children? And I mean, you name it, all the negative self-talk, all the guilt, like I did it all to myself. And we were lucky. It missed where we were going. The hurricane missed it. We were able to fly there. It all worked out. And we had a whole week. And when I tell you, it took me several days before I finally felt like I could just relax and breathe. And I felt that weight come off my shoulders. Nothing happened. It was all me. Nothing was happening at home. There was no problems. Everything was fine. Everyone was taken care of. And it took me several days to relax. And that really struck me, and I'll never forget it. And by the end, I was like, oh, I wish we did 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
I got used to it. But you're talking about that day one, the arrival, the unwind, being open to all this. That's a big thing. And it can be heavy for a lot of people, just especially for mothers, leaving so much behind, even though it's all good, just having all your ducks in a row and having made all of those plans to let that happen. So,
yeah. So, and Marie, let me ask you, when you guys went to that trip, did it take your husband several days to sink into deep relaxation?
I don't think so.
And that's it, right? I do think
we're wired so differently, right?
Men and women. And a part of it is really that maternal instinct, though I would argue that our partners also are deeply dedicated to our children.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think another part is definitely that societal pressure that the mom just always has to be there. And we fall into this like martyr mom scenario where we really start to believe that without us, the ship will sink. And
Right.
and maybe some of us tell the story to ourselves to feel more purpose even, right?
Mhm.
Even though motherhood itself is very purpose driven. But if we were to get ill and had to go to a hospital for a couple of days, the ship would probably go on floating. Why not create like an intentional space to actually fill us back up? I am inviting mothers who are at a place where they feel like they would like to take a couple of days to themselves. And I create a space for them to come to. And actually, during the Ohio retreat, during that day one of our beautiful participants shared the story because I asked everyone, like, how did you find us? How did you come to this place? And she shared that her husband, for many years, would take an annual or maybe even biannual motorcycle trip with a bunch of his buddies. And she was not bitter about it. She loved that for him and she wanted to give him that space and she wanted to free up that money for him to do that because she loves him and she knows he needs that time for himself. And then one day she was asked by a friend, well, what's your motorcycle trip? And she was like, wow, I had never,
Yeah.
I had never even like considered that.
I can
And
think of so many conversations that are so similar that I've had with
yeah.
friends as well. Yeah.
And of course, once she was in that space, of course her husband wanted the very same things for her. And why wouldn't
Right.
he?
Right.
So yeah.
It's important. It's important to take that break. And I know I cut you off on day one, but I just wanted to mention that
No, I
unwinding
think that
piece
that's a really
is
important
huge.
piece. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
go
yeah.
ahead. Tell us a little bit more about what it would look like.
So for this upcoming retreat, I'm actually let me backtrack. For Ohio, I did like a fear release ceremony on that first night. And then we did like some shaking it out and dancing and breath work to really loosen ourselves up. And I didn't know if it was going to work, right? That was my first retreat experience. And when by the end of the evening, these beautiful women were just laughing and dancing and hugging and already feeling like friends. Like I knew, okay, this is it. Like this is working. This is gorgeous. And so for this next one, I want to focus the first evening on just heart opening. And then with our hearts open, that's like kind of when we go into that second day of the retreat. And then the second day, I would say is probably the more mentally, I don't want to use the word draining because it is a retreat around rest, but it's definitely the one where I think we see a lot of growth and we see a lot of transformation because that second day, we have a lot of gentle movement and meditation and what I like to call soft coaching, which is just rather than a top down approach to coaching, it's more like a gentle conversation around certain topics. And I would say that day two kind of will probably give you some realizations or unpack a couple of things for you. And so,
Sure. It sounds like everybody gets to dig pretty deep because they finally
yeah.
have that space to do it.
Mhm. Yeah. And also, I do want to point out here that everything that we do at the pause are simply invitation. And so at no point is anybody going to be mad if you say, no, actually, this part of the itinerary doesn't sound like it benefits me. I'd rather not show up and I'd rather take a nap. Like you do you.
Go for it.
So yeah, so the second day is a lot about just reflecting and then releasing that too. And then the third day is very embodiment focused, like very focus on this luxurious, luscious feeling of being in our bodies. And that is usually accomplished with more movement and like a fun group situation. Like in Ohio, we spontaneously actually cold plunge together. But for this next retreat, maybe a wild ocean swim together. Rachel is actually a trained chef. So Rachel is catering the whole entire retreat with beautiful local seasonal homemade meals. All her meals are great, but on that third day, she just like ramps it up even more. and she goes more into those comfort foods. And we also end the third day with a big farewell dinner, and it's just wonderfully gluttonous and just amazing. So the goal really is that by the end of day 3, everyone feels nourished and restored and feels their body again. Because I think as mothers, we're so often kind of out of our bodies, right? We act from a place of survival, and so by the end of day 3, I hope you just feel centered and rested and alive. And at the Ohio farewell dinner, I looked around the table and it was just so much full belly laughing going on, and some of the
Is the best.
frowns.
I think that's the best
Yes.
medicine in the whole world.
Yeah,
It really
it
is.
really is. And as there was like especially 1 or 2 participants that I've closely there were more introverts, and so I closely just kind of watched their facial expressions change over the course of the retreat, and then seeing their tension just kind of come off, and then sitting at the dinner on day 3 and just look just loose and relaxed and happy. That was everything for me.
What an experience. It sounds incredible. Sometimes just describing, using these adjectives can help bring us more feelings of calm and just ease. And I mean, some of the things I just wrote down, unwinding, opening your heart, even with the coaching, soft coaching, everything's very gentle. You get to reflect, release your comfort foods, being nourished, restored, centered, rested, alive. Those are such important qualities to have in our lives. And I feel like a lot of those are lost a lot of the time because we're so busy and we're living such fast-paced lives and in a fast-paced world. And what a gift to have a few days to really focus on these things. And like you said, start living in your body again, because we don't necessarily live in our bodies very often as we get older. So kids are so good at it. Sometimes I try to
They
take
are.
lessons from especially little kids because they live in the moment. They're always in the moment. They don't worry about what if they're saying the right thing or the wrong thing. They just say whatever they're feeling. And it's like to get back to that a little bit would serve us all really well.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I'm actually currently also just feeling that for myself, like how often I feel so tense in my jaw and my neck, and just kind of learning to really move my body freely again. It's kind of crazy that I have to relearn that because like you said,
Right.
you look at your children and they just do it, right? Often to our annoyance, right? Because
No,
their lips just go everywhere.
they're everywhere. So
Yeah. But I recently read something and it said we are just extremely overstressed and underexpressed. And I think we all at this point have realized the stress piece, but the underexpressed piece I think is enormous. Like kind of, ending that stress cycle through movement. And I've been really putting an emphasis on having like a lot of kitchen dance parties in my house and just shaking my body or even just doing like this crazy horse breath. And my kids look at me like I'm funny, but then I think they also look at me like, oh, cool. She's weird, but we love her. Like she's fun. Right. And just like tap into that playfulness. But if you're in survival, you cannot be playful at the same time. That's not going to work. And so the pause is really helps like to try to get you back to that. And that's why I do think it is such an important investment, because I do truly believe that when you return, you're going to be more rested and you're going to have a more positive outlook, and you can take that with you and bring that back to your family.
Absolutely. And it's going to serve everyone so well. You take care of yourself, then you can take care of the people around you. And that's it. It's simple
And
I
hard.
don't remember to do it. Yes, because it
Yeah.
is so hard. So hard. And it's so easy to get distracted from it. So
And at the
just
pause, like I know I've mentioned the word movement a lot, and I want to point out that we do have yoga and gentle movements, but it's really for all bodies. Like please don't be deterred because this is not it's a wellness retreat. This is not a yoga retreat. Like you do not have to be at a certain level. You don't have to come from a place of a lot of exercising to be feeling right at home at the pause. you can come from any sort of food relationship background, whether, having a healthy relationship with food has been one of your struggles or not. Like Rachel's strength is really tapping back into that joy of eating without restriction. So I really want to emphasize that we try to make this retreat for everyone, every mother, I should say.
Yes,
because
it sounds very
that's our,
special and a very memorable experience that will last far beyond those couple of days, I'm sure. So I'll certainly link all of these things. And as we wind down today, I'm thinking, okay, for the day to day, can you just offer maybe some little gentle lessons that you've learned, maybe little things? I always like people listening to come away with a few things that they can go try to incorporate into their life, like right now, like finish the podcast and all right, I'm going to find a way to slow down a little bit more. So maybe just a few little tips or things that you've come across or picked up along the way that you'd like to share.
yes, for sure. So I would say community, breath, bravery, and joy. And community, I think, is such a vital part of the human experience. And for mothers in particularly, I think we often feel so lonely and isolated and misunderstood. And if you're in this place right now and finding the right village or community for you seems daunting, I just want to encourage you to just do the first step and reach out to someone. Maybe someone that you already know, maybe someone that you know from Instagram that's in your local area, or maybe even not, right? Maybe create like a virtual coffee date. Like just reach out and approach people with vulnerability, because in the end of the day, I think we're all in that same place. I think it's going to be very unlikely that someone's going to straight out reject you. And if they do, then just realize that they were never for you and to begin with. But most likely when you approach people from a vulnerability standpoint, they're going to be very open hearted and, with open arms
Yes.
towards you. And so if you feel disheartened that you don't have the right people in your life, I say don't wait for that village to magically appear, but just start working on creating a village for yourself today. And that second piece is breath. Breath is just so important. I mean, breath is literally what keeps us alive.
Our life
And
force, right?
yep,
Which again is another thing that's so simple, but we don't focus on it very often. We
yes.
take it for
And
granted.
and even myself. So I'm a trained breathwork facilitator, and yet I hold my breath all the time. And I have to realize, oh wow, no wonder I'm so flustered right now. I'm not breathing. And so maybe today, as you're driving in your car, just notice your belly rising and falling. Like, I feel like that's a very simple way to approach breath work. You're already stuck in the car. You already can't do anything else but focus on what's in front of you. So, and you have a seatbelt, which is a really good tool to kind of feel in whether or not you're breathing deeply. So just today, notice whether or not you have a slight tug on that seatbelt as you're breathing or you don't. And if you don't feel it, just kind of refocus on really filling that belly with air and breathing out deeply. And if you want to take it further, you can do those in breaths and think something reaffirming like love in, fear out, or anything that works for you. But I would say, I think the car is a great way to start, especially with children, because we often have just left a state of transition, which can be hard. And so we're all finally buckled in and stored away in the car seats and in the car. I think that's a great moment to realign with our breath so that when wherever it is that we're arriving, we can arrive in a more calm state. And I also like to do, for example, when I pick up my daughter from her little Waldorf school, especially if I had a busy morning and I'm on the drive to get her, I can focus on my breath and I can then open the door of my minivan and be like, okay, and here she is. Here's my beautiful daughter, right? And I can really see that and use that moment for connection. But I cannot do that when I'm like, oh my God, as soon as I get home, I need to do the laundry. And I also have this work project is waiting on me. Like, so use car times for breathing times. Like that's, I think, a very attainable tip that I have for your listeners today.
Definitely is. We are all in the car so much, right? So
Yeah.
make it count.
And then also, if you want to tap more into breath work, then you can always reach out to me as well. And I'd love to be a guidance for that. Anyways, my third big tip is bravery. Just be brave today and know that you are a good mother, even if you do good things for yourselves.
Say that again, Eva. Say that again, because that's important.
You can be a very amazing, wonderful, loving mother and do something good for yourself.
That says it all. That says it all. I think that's a perfect place to end. And I think it wraps up everything that we talked about today. And maybe I will see if I can get Eva to record a little mini breathwork session to
Oh, yeah.
drop down the road as a little mini session. We've done that before on the podcast and people love it. It's always a big hit. So
that would be fun. And I do actually want to mention, because I think that's that's the one thing we haven't touched on, is so the next retreat is going to be in Maine. And it's going to be at the end of the summer. It's going to be September 22nd to 25. And it's going to be just a beautiful end of summer retreat before we're heading into this deeply transformative time of autumn, and then obviously a long winter ahead. And Maine specifically, because not only is it Rachel's new home, but also we felt that this rugged landscape and the beautiful seascapes are just kind of this perfect metaphor for motherhood in itself,
yes.
right? I feel like Maine, if I think of Maine, it evokes these feelings of endurance, but beauty and ruggedness, but also soft, gentle. Yeah, so everything at once, right? Like that's Maine to me. And it's also so grounded and such a creative place. And so we thought it would be the perfect location for our second retreat.
It sounds like it. And the pictures are beautiful. So I will encourage the listeners to look at all the show notes today, because there's be a lot of information linked there. And Eva, it was so nice meeting you and talking to you about this. And I feel very inspired, and I feel honestly more calm and grounded just having this conversation. So I hope that other people can come away with this same feeling. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. And Marie, thank you for all that you do for everyone who wants to tap deeper into that slow living journey. I think your podcast is wonderful, and I hope you can attract a lot of wonderful people with that.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Let's Slow Down. Wishing you a summer full of simplicity and ease and everything amazing.